Yes.
Also, destroy. I don't think we'll see those outside.
Good evening, I'm District Secretary Nicole Gonzalez. It is Tuesday, January 6, 2018. This is it is February 6, 2018. This is a regular meeting of the Dublin Standalone Services District Board of Directors. An External Affairs Committee meeting was held earlier today, attended by President Juan Peter Leopold and Director Halkett. In accordance with DSRSD's Day of Service policy, no director will receive any compensation or stipend for participating in more than one meeting on the state. Presiding this evening is President Juan Peter Leopold.
Call the meeting to order. Please stand and join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Nicole.
Director Halkett?
Here.
Director Howard?
Here.
Director Forte?
Here.
Vice President Michelot? Here. President Juan Peter Leopold?
Here. Okay. Any special announcements or activities?
Yes, we have some. One is the Citizen Water Academy flyer is now out, and we have 3 sessions for our Citizens Water Academy, with the first starting on March 14th, and another one in April, and another one in May. There's already a lot of interest. We might end up going oversubscribed and have to pick and choose. Those who come along to the event, for a seating on the bus. So we're really happy with Sue's work on getting a lot of interest going. We have, I believe, 3 staff introductions tonight. So why don't we go ahead and hit that? So who is the first victim?
Good evening. I'd like to introduce you to Mari. Go to the microphone.
You know the drill, John. You know the drill.
I'm happy to introduce to you a new member of the Customer Service and Billing Division, Kamari. I'm so sorry. Pruitt. She comes to us with 12 years of experience in billing, administrative support, and customer service. She worked most recently at the Workman's Compensation Claims Assistant for Amtrust North America. She's really familiar with back office software processes and different companies to speak extremely quickly. She also lives locally, so she's really familiar with our community and our customer base. And we're just really thrilled to have her.
Welcome. Thank you.
Good evening, Stevens Director, Sean Quinlan, Mechanical Supervisor.
You gotta do it just one.
All right, to my direct right is Michael De La Rosa. Michael De La Rosa comes to us from the City of Daly City with 16 years experience as a mechanic and wastewater systems operator. And very far right is Cedar Lopez. He comes to us with 20 years experience as a wastewater treatment mechanic from the City of Visalia and the City of Stockton. So it's great guys.
16 and 20 years. Did you both start when you were like 12?
Oh, that's great to have someone with that much experience.
Yes, it's been
Welcome.
very, very
How long were
pleasant.
you at Visalia? That's my hometown.
Really?
Yeah.
I was working 9 years.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome.
Great.
That's it, special announcements.
You can leave if you'd like.
You are free to go.
Bye-bye. Good luck.
Welcome.
Okay, item number 5 is public comment. This is the time at which any member of the audience who's a member of the public can speak to the board on any item that's not on the agenda. Seeing none, we'll go past that. Number 6, reports. Reports by the general manager and staff.
Just on the event calendar, we have our March 1st Tri-Valley Water Liaison meeting to discuss the potable reuse feasibility study, long awaited. We've been working on it for about 15 months. $800,000 study, and all the agencies have been working together and have that almost complete. We're going to present it at the liaison meeting. So that's at 4 o'clock in Livermore that day. Our external affairs committee will be going to that event.
Okay. Any correspondence? No correspondence? Okay. Item 6B, Joint Powers Authority and Committee reports.
Well,
Jack, would you like to talk about your work?
Sure. Yeah, we held our Grower meeting last night. No major items other than elected a new chair and vice chair. One thing that came up was Central Sand, their committee to discuss giving us water, wastewater, decided to send that to their full board. And they'll be holding a meeting on that on their full board also on March 1st. And Director Mellon suggested that it would be good for board members to show, just to show enthusiasm. And so he volunteered to do that. I said, well, okay, I'll do that too. And then, so that kind of brings up the question, do you want me to speak on behalf of the whole board, or just my personal opinions? Should we agendize that for the next meeting? I don't know.
We'd like to discuss it, we agendize it for February 20th in advance.
Okay,
of the CCS meeting.
have you heard from them as to how they're going to make the presentation? Are they expecting us to have a counterpoint?
No, I mean, well, they'll say, fill out a speaker card. I don't think
Okay.
there's like going to be a presentation by us. It's
Okay.
more a conceptual approval. It's direction to their staff. Maybe you continue developing this concept. Or, stop, don't do that, and go back to your day job.
Okay, then let's calendar
Agendize it
it
for the
yeah.
next meeting. Maybe we could do water resources, maybe Ed has some time to go to. Who knows? Anyway, that's all I had to say about that, unless you had something to add.
No, that was good. External affairs, Rich, is there anything you'd like to talk about?
No, we just discussed getting ourselves ready for the March 1st meeting with Tri-Valley people, which we've met with plenty of times over the last 2 to 3 years, so I think we're pretty welcome with that. And then, kind of a strange timing, we're meeting with, Regina and I are meeting with a Central Stand board member, and I think their GM, some of their staff, on the same topic, but after this
The board
meeting, after the board meeting, so,
Guess we'll see.
when, timing-wise,
There's no, well, unfortunately.
when is their board? Their board-
March
Their board
1st.
meeting is March 1st. The liaison meeting is March 6th.
When are we, when is it, when are we meeting
We're meeting on February 20th
again? And then March,
and March 6th.
after that, though, all right. never mind.
Liaison meeting is March 1st.
No, this is the water one.
The
one
Tri-Valley
with
Water
Central
Liaison meeting
Central
is on
Sand
March
is,
1st.
yeah,
A Central Sand full board meeting
is on the first.
is also on the 1st.
So if you can slip something into your little GM packet after their board meeting, before we get rid of these people, so we have some idea what happened.
What happened, yes.
Yeah. So it's now that Georgina and I can be there, because we're going to be at another meeting, so.
Being at another meeting.
All right.
All right, okay, item 6C, is there anything we need to move around? No?
Come through the other side.
Item 7A, minutes of the January 16th meeting. Minutes of January 16th meeting.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of the January 16th meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No abstention, motion carried. Item number 8, consent calendar. These are items that typically can be approved with one motion. Do we hear a motion?
Approval?
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent calendar, which only consists of item 8A this week. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion unanimously carried, hearing no abstentions. Item 9, board business. 9A, elect to become subject to the California Uniform Public Instruction Cost Accounting Act. Dan Carroll.
Yeah, I'll start on that. So 9A and 9B are related. 9A is a resolution we need to pass under state law to make ourselves subject to this Cost Accounting Act. And 9B is an ordinance that we have to put that into effect. Another piece that would come along later is an update of our policy in form of the new ordinance. In looking at it today, there was a couple of special cases that came up that would require probably some tweaking for clarity in the ordinance. So we're going to ask is that the board continue 9B, the ordinance, for 2 weeks. We're going to bring back slightly clearer language in the ordinance, but that doesn't stop you from taking action on 9A, the resolution. That can go on ahead, and then you'll see the first reading of the ordinance and the policy revision at the next board meeting.
Okay, then let's act on 9A.
And Carol can give you an update.
Oh,
on the meeting.
sorry.
Actually, I am going to ask Karen Bain to do the
Karen's
update.
here.
I was off last week and Karen did all of the work, so I think she should get all the credit and she has a nice presentation ready for you, so Karen.
The California Uniform Public Instruction Cost Accounting Act, which we'll refer to as the Act, rather than say all of that. It's been around since 1983. At one time, the district did consider adopting the Act, but at that time, we did not have everything that was required in place. One of the things that's required is a cost accounting, being able to track in projects, labor, overhead, and such. And some time ago, when we got EU, we started putting those things in place where we're tracking costs, our own internal project labor, and overhead costs. The Act, as I said, was adopted in 1983. There's currently 1,100 agencies that are under the Act. 44 of them are sewer districts, which include Castro Valley, Oraloma, and Napa. And I found out today that Central San is in the process of adopting the Act. And it will be going to their board next month. And there's 25 water agencies that have also adopted the Act. Currently, by adopting the Act, this would allow us to do public work projects up to $45,000 or less with our own internal labor, or to negotiate contract or issue purchase orders. So this would not require the formal bidding that we currently go through for anything that's $25,000 or over. Public projects in the amount of $175,000 or less would be awarded by informal bidding, and the Act requires, well, one of the requirements of the Act is that you create your own qualified contractors list, and that based on the qualified contractors list that you have, you would invite informal bidding. So you would pre-qualify the contractors at that time. And then the third phase of the Act is anything over $175,000 or more would go through the formal bidding process that we currently do at a much lower level.
Any questions for Karen?
Well, okay, so a devil's advocate would argue what it gives the board less control.
What are the downsides?
Yeah.
Nothing comes for free.
Nothing comes from, what are the downsides?
I don't think there is anything.
Yeah, well, you would see less, because right now, anything 25,000 or over has to go to formal bidding. It doesn't have to go to the board, but we still have a lot of process that we have to do for public works. So if it's, say $26,000, you would have to do a whole formal bid under our current public contract code.
I've never asked about the cost to go out to bid for our district, but I know in other projects that other agencies we work for, I'm always told that it costs a minimum of $25,000 to $30,000 in staff time to prepare documents, the
So
advertising.
we could spend $20,000 to bid a $26,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a $40,000 project, and all of the cost of the contractor bill versus our courses or using another contractor might in theory be a little higher because of those administrative costs. Total cost on small projects should come out way behind. So, one argument could be, well, you have to do that work anyway, you have staff available, let's look at just the construction cost, but it's not looking at the whole picture. You might have some contractors, maybe, with some small specialty work that you might want to bid in a competitive environment, and you'd be precluding that. But if something's going to happen like one time every 2 or 3 years, and we want to have a fully competitive procedure just to address, one specialty contractor's need to bid on a small scale project on price alone.
Well, I think you got a good example of how difficult it can be when you try to do our lobby project. For the relatively small amount of work there was there, when you kick in the prevailing wage and all the formal bidding process, it makes it not
Yeah,
feasible.
you hit the limit very quickly.
I mean, even on the public works project at $175,000, what does that buy you today? Nothing.
Not a lot.
This is a continuation of our process to try to streamline and give us more flexibility. And it has been vetted, it has been out there for 35 years. There are a substantial amount of agencies that have done this. If it didn't work, it would have been restricted by now. We still have the internal controls in place because we do have to have a master list of qualified contractors, and we still have all of our purchasing controls in place as well. So you don't have to adopt this, but we just feel that it's one of those steps that we're taking to look at the workload and say, is there another way of doing our work that is just as good as far as internal controls the auditors want issues with, that gives us more flexibility?
If I may, Madam President, a lawyer can always find a downside. I mean, obviously, we talked a little bit about perhaps contractors being disgruntled, they're not on the list. But the one thing this will do for the contracts that have to be awarded by the board, the ones over $175,000, it requires two things. It requires a 4/5 vote, and it requires the determination that the district's cost estimate was reasonable. That's what it says. So it's a teeny little procedural addition to the way you award contracts now. But the flexibility probably outweighs that. But that's for you to determine.
That's worth
So, what's the pleasure of the board? I'll second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the resolution to be subject to the California Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Map. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion unanimously carried. No abstentions. Okay,
And then
so
2 weeks from now, we'll come with the ordinance and preliminary on how the policy will be changed to match the.
so we're going
Well,
to
we'd ask you to move to
delay it.
postpone that to
Okay.
February 20th.
I move that we delay 9B until the next meeting.
it. Second?
It's been moved and seconded that we delay item 9B until our next formal meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion unanimously carried with no abstentions. Item 9C, reject apparent low bid award construction agreement to GSE Construction Company.
I
members of the board. This item is related to our water system, water quality improvement project. We are asking that you reject a low bid and you award the bid to GSE Construction. And this is for the installation of a chlorination system at Reservoir 3B. We're also asking that you increase the budget for the project. So, as I said, the project's for the original project from the CIP was for a chlorination system at Reservoir 1A and mixers at a number of other reservoirs. And after we installed the system at Reservoir 1A, we saw that it worked quite well in keeping a consistent chlorine residual coming out of that reservoir. And so we thought it'd be better to put in another one of those systems where we have a lot of problems in our distribution system, particularly the area that feeds Shaker Ranch, because there's a lot of long pipelines that go up there and not a lot of water use. So we designed another chlorination system for the project. And you can see in the item, there's a graph that shows that shows that out of this reservoir, we can have very low chlorine residuals in the, almost, below 0.2, 0.1 level, and we'll go to maybe only half a part per million. The target we want to have in our system is about a 2. And what we do is this system has ammonia and it has a chlorine tank, and it looks at the chlorine residual in the tank, it adds a little bit, and checks the residual again, so it's a constant feedback loop that's looking at the residual, and it'll just keep adding until the residual gets up there and then it'll stop adding. So it's keeping us at, you can dial in a target and it'll go to that target. Which is very helpful, so we can keep our chlorine residual up and kill all the pathogens in the system, and we won't have those coliforms that we had earlier, at least in that area of the system. So we went out to bids for another system just like the one we put in Reservoir 1A and Reservoir 3B, and we had an engineer's estimate of $418,000. The bids then ranged from $484 to $538. Our lowest bidder, unfortunately, had a experience modification ratio, which is indicator of their safety record, that was too high for our requirements. So they were determined to be that they were not responsible bidder. So we're suggesting that we go to the second lowest bidder, which is GSE Construction, the same firm that's actually working on our digest project right now. And the GST bid was $497,000. So in addition to accepting the awarding the contract, we're also looking for a budget increase. When we did the first system, this second system, we invested more in the design of it. We invested more in the sheds that the chemicals will be in and the containment. And we also got a deal on the first run because we had some of the state integration work that was done through the state project rather than through this project. And we also used a lot of staff time on the first run. So we're asking for an increase of $390,000 for the project, for a total of $986,000. Questions?
Okay, any questions for Judy?
Yeah, I thought the contract was for 480.
497. But we still have money in the project.
Okay.
There's still money remaining in the project. We have enough to do the second system.
See, the construction cost went up about 80, is up almost 80,000. And you want 390, so there was that much more in design and CM.
This is the first, I have to say, the first time around, we were working with PAC system. They're the people who have, they essentially kind of have a patent on the system. They had done pilots of this, they hadn't done a program one. They suggested, hey, we can provide all the equipment, you guys can force the pad, we'll put it in. And we ended up using a lot of staff time that I don't think was charged to this project. It was just charged to our usual O&M. And And like I said, then we had some of our SCADA guys working on it, we had some SCADA, so it was kind of put together, one piece at a time, bits and pieces. It ended up taking a lot longer, it ended up having a lot more problems, making sure we didn't have the eye wash system, those type of things. So when we started on the second project, we said, we're going to design this. We're not going to deal with all the hiccups we had in the first one. So there were more costs in design and in the CM. So we're tracking, we're spending more money on just getting it done, doing it right, because I think there were a lot of other costs that didn't get charged to the party that were stacked on. And I don't think we fully estimate what it's costing us. So yeah, this time we have more in design, more in CM, and more in, and then there's more in the construction itself and the site work and
Yeah, I can see the construction costs going up more than your estimate, but I'm just curious why the CM cost would be, I'm assuming it's not significant, you're not talking like $80,000 or $90,000.
No, I think the CM is good.
Your schedule's still the same that you planned on, right? 6 months, 8 months, I mean, how long?
Right, so it should be in just a few, I think, once we get going, I think it's only like, there's a long lead time on it, but the actual construction time is very quick.
The only reason I'm asking is 390 is a big jump, and I don't see it that much in the construction side, so that means.
No, there's more in design, there's more in the CM, and there's more in having design on the RFIs and look at the submittals. Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to award the contract to GSE and then deny the lowest bidder and the budget. It's two separate. Do we have to do?
You could do one motion for both
Okay,
resolutions.
then I will
Choosing
also
separate ones.
move to approve the budget increase.
Okay.
Yes, also good.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we reject the low bid and award the construction agreement to GSE Construction, as well as increase our budget for the project by $390,000. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion unanimously carried and no abstentions. Okay, item 9D, report on Los Vaqueros expansion.
And this was triggered because of some recent articles in the news media about Los Vaqueros. Just wanted to give a little bit of context for the board on that. One of the issues is the voters over 2 years ago approved Proposition 1 that set aside $7 million for various water type improvements, of which $2.7 million was allocated as matching funds for some storage projects, and agencies were invited to submit proposals on that. And the initial applications have come in. There's about $5.8 billion in application requests for investment projects, $2.7 billion in funding. And as you may have seen in the media reports, preliminary discussions by the California Water Commission staff, the California Water Commission is to make a determination on the components that are in the grants. Say the projects have not scored according to the rules well enough for any of the projects to qualify for any funding. So that's a kind of surprise. And Aqua, the Association of California Water Agencies, sent a concern letter. The California Water Commission said we need to rethink this and be clear on what the criteria are. One of the 12 projects, obviously, Los Vaqueros, that we're following closely, is number 7, is participating as one of about a dozen junior partners on that. Coastal Water is with the project component. Site reservoir is also a reservoir of interest to us being done by GPA of Northwest of Sacramento, and Zone 7 is watching that very carefully as well. The one thing I wanted to note, though, was in the editorial in the press about the Los Vaqueros project, they kind of described the numbers. The Vaqueros, 275,000 feet ultimate size, 160,000 feet full right now. But then as they got farther into the editorial, the editorial got a little lost in the numbers. They made it seem as if it's all new 275,000 feet. It's not 160,000 is all we have, it's just racing down to 50 feet. So yeah, we're more than 100,000 feet. It's not the first meter that shows on the sideways. The other thing is the article described it as a new water source for up to 500,000 residents. Again, Vaqueros isn't a new water supply. It's a new water storage facility. So just because you have so many thousand acre feet, doesn't mean that water magically appears year after year after year. It's a storage place for the water you already have the right to. So keep that in mind as people talk about Vaqueros being a silver bullet. It serves as a happy residents with water. There are some advantages to that. It solves certain problems with catastrophic closure of development. It's a water that's stored there, that would be a partner, high value to a partner. It's another way of definitely pipeline as part of that project, which offers another way to bring water around part of the development. So there's advantages to that. Some seven's watching it closely, we're watching it closely. I just wanted to clarify, it's not a new water source we should be counting. Yes, we're able to answer any questions.
You should have written a response to a letter to the editor. I thought about it at the time and then it got lost in CASA somewhere.
I did, but I didn't say it.
I had to calm down.
Well, correcting
My
it,
staff pulled me back to work.
but correcting misinformation in an editorial, I think, is acceptable.
The additional 115,000 in tonnage
It hasn't been defined, and it's very complicated because
Well,
half or more of the benefit of Los Vaqueros is water for environmental purposes. As I understand it from a presentation last summer at the conference, this kind of first priority is water for various development projects in the Central Valley. Is what it goes for, and then not a lot of those small. How much can be reserved for the space be stored only for a period of time? Is it a time share, or is it like own total space? And Custer Water hasn't defined that. You gotta wait to see how the project goes. It's incumbent if their dozen junior partners are going to step up to see how it all works. So more details to come.
Is there currently a way to get the water from that reservoir into the Tri-Valley that will be recorded?
Yeah, and there's talk.
Transfer the pipeline.
What is the new, where is that pipeline?
It would go from one of the Los Vaqueros intake lines over to the electric reservoir. And then that's where the South Aqueduct takes off. So it's go from their intake.
So you could bypass Clifton Court and still be relying on the South Valley.
Yes.
That cuts some of the, it cuts some of the danger parts.
It's not a problem.
So it's a way of getting water when you have issues at the pumps of the projects, have issues at the pumps that you can bring water. You could bring your water through Los Vaqueros. So if you're getting to Los Vaqueros, because it's really conveyance is a big part of its advantage.
Yeah.
Do we have access to the methodology and formula how to calculate the PDO?
Sorry, say again?
Do we have access to the methodology and formula that they use to calculate the public benefit ratio? I mean, it just seems to be like it'd be
Yes,
skewed.
we can pull out their application and see how they calculate it, and then we can infer from comments made by the commissioners and members as to how they did the math.
They did, when the commission did share, it's my understanding, the commission did share with the project applicants how they were doing their calculations. So-
Here's your score and just move on.
We're not going to tell you how we got there.
Each applicant kind of uses their own method on how they calculate their benefits, their public benefits, and then the commission looked at it and perhaps they calculated a different way, but they did share and tell, and recently they started to, when nobody hit the ratio that was required, then they met with the applicants and said, okay, we're looking for some more information. But I know that they each shared expressly how they do the calculation. Is that your?
Yeah, there are others that know, obviously know a lot more about that. But my understanding is that they provided some information that they were
Didn't share that
calculation.
Algorithm.
Shifting algorithm.
I'm sure there's many projects that are on the borderline, but when you consider sites and materials are simply storage, it's hard to understand how the good city was done.
Yeah.
I think the commission understands it's important that they find a way to get that money out.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, when I read the article, I thought somebody has no clue what they're doing. It's all public benefit.
Yeah, but the bond issue apparently described, sort of constrained what was to be considered to be a public benefit. Because there was a lot of pressure, that we don't want to just build more dams that don't make any sense.
Oh, my God.
So that was sort of, I think, how that came about. But as with legislations adopted by the legislature, initiatives are worse in terms of making sausage, this, that, the other, and so we got language that,
Yeah.
it's less than ideal.
Case in point, some of you are on Facebook, you might have seen recently a hot toddy recipe. Somebody posted the original one, and it's got like 10 things in it. And of course, I responded, my mom used to make it with honey, lemon, and tea. Very simple, brandy, of course. Very simple, but again, it's, somebody got their hand in the, in it, and there was too many cooks, yes. Okay. Do we have to, no, we don't have to act on it, it's just information, thank you. Okay, 9E, we're going to receive a presentation about Prop 218.
If I may, I'm going to go to the podium where the mouse is, so I can actually run the PowerPoint. And I will say that two things. One is that I'm a lawyer, and lawyers don't always do such a great job with PowerPoints. At one point, I got really fancy when I was teaching at AB 1234 ethics, and I had different text dropping down from the right and from the left, stuff like that. It came in the right order, and it was, I thought it was really cool. I emailed it to somebody, and it all got jumbled. So the last one came in first, and it was completely a mess. So I don't do that anymore. This is just going to be boring. And as far as that goes, no special animation and no pictures. Just a lot of words. I'm a lawyer, but don't worry about the slides. They'll be a little busy, but I'm not going to go through the whole thing because this is not called Proposition 218 in-depth study or 101B. It's basics. So we'll start off with let's see now. What is this? This is what I'm going to talk about, and this one I might read. Chart, which. You have handouts, but I expect you can't read them with this little light. The first one is just a couple of an explanation of what subject Prop 218 which is not. It's a little more complicated than that because of some of the language of the actual proposition and the way the Supreme Court has sort of worked with the words. Then we'll talk a little bit about substantive requirements for rates, and I'll hit that real quickly, because we're going to talk a little bit more about that when we get to another workshop where we're talking about responses to San Juan Capistrano, which is based on challenge one of those substantive requirements. Then we'll talk about procedures. You've been through, all of you have been through at least one of those, just sort of highlight the highlights there. And then I'm going to shift gears and talk about Prop 26 briefly. Prop 26 actually governs our water capacity and wastewater capacity fees. And so I'll talk a little bit about that. Then we'll turn to assessments, which we have at least potentially coming up with the Doherty Valley standby assessments at the current level, not raising as much, providing as much revenue as escalating costs that DWR is charging the zone is asking us to pay. So, moving on. Charges subject to Proposition 218. It applies to fees or charges imposed by an agency upon a parcel, or this is my favorite part, or upon a person as an incident of property ownership. Now, if you could tell me what an incident of property ownership is, I'd love to know. I really don't know what that is. But the California Supreme Court many years ago had a case involving a tax on landlords. And it was challenged on the basis that it was imposed on parcels. And the court said, oh no, that's not imposed as an incident of property ownership. It's imposed because they're landlords. They're in a business of renting residential property. So that gives you a clue as to what that means, but it doesn't provide a whole lot of elucidation. So a lot of people were thinking, well, maybe that doesn't apply to water rates, because after all, a good part of water rates, and according to the traditional methodology, for conservation purposes, there's been a standard of putting 70% on the commodity rates, meaning that you have, the theory being to send a price signal. If people use too much water, they have to pay a bunch more, and they say, oh my gosh, this is costing me too much, I don't want to do that. There was the Bighorn case put an end to that approach. They said basically if it's charged for ongoing water delivery, it's imposed by an agency on a parcel. And that we're talking about water going through a pipe to a parcel, it's pretty well fixed. And even it doesn't depend on, even though a good part of the billing depends on voluntary decisions as to how much water to use. And this is sort of a little out of order, but let's see if the next slide has this. Yes, okay. And that was building off of Richmond versus Shasta Community Services District, which concluded that Prop 218 didn't apply to connection fees or capacity charges like our water and wastewater capacity reserve fees, because it was a voluntary act of developing the property. It didn't apply to all landowners. You couldn't figure out who you would apply it to because you don't know who's going to develop. So the court reasoned that that's not a Prop 2 fee under a property-related fee or charge under Proposition 218. And very recently, in late December, the Supreme Court decided that it didn't apply to groundwater pumping charges in a situation where the groundwater is actually delivered by the agency to the users of the water. There had been an earlier case out of involving the Poparo Water Management District that had concluded that, and that's not quite the whole name of the agency, that it concluded that even though these charges were pumping charges, they had enough relation to the property that could be considered, they could be challenged under Proposition 218. This court said, no, if you have a pipeline going to the property, then it could be subject to Prop 218, but where you're just charging pumpers for what they're pumping, that's not a property-related fee. Because the pumper might not own the property. There's a lot of variations there. So those are a couple examples of fees or charges that are not imposed upon a parcel or upon a person as an incident of property ownership. I love saying that. Does that make any sense? I don't think so.
Is there a number of parcels required to have this thing kick in?
No. No, there's I mean, you have to have more than one, obviously, because if you just assume all the costs there. But not as far as I know. Not as far as I know. It doesn't apply in the wholesale situation. And we'll get to that under Prop 26 applies to that. So here's the substantive requirements for rates under Prop 218. This is basically the language right out of the Constitution with omissions where it wasn't particularly helpful or relevant and it would take up too much room. So I've highlighted part of the third one. The amount shall not exceed the proportional cost of the service attributable to the parcel. That's the one that San Juan Capistrano case relied upon. in determining that tiered rates that weren't based on the cost of delivering water to each tier were unconstitutional. Instead, it violated that particular part of substantive requirement of Prop 218. Now, once again, like incident of property ownership, we have the proportional cost of the service attributable to the parcel. If it's not the cost of the service to the parcel, it's the cost of the service attributable to the parcel. Now, no one's ever said what exactly that is supposed to mean, but this is another example of an initiative. And there's a little bit of fuzziness in that language. Not quite enough fuzziness for the San Juan Capistrano Court to say, oh, well, we can just sort of fold in water conservation through that process. I'll also highlight the last one, because a number of challenges have been made under Prop 218 in a situation where a city decides that they're going to shift some portion of their water revenues, usually it's water revenues, not sewer revenues, to the general fund. Now, that's clearly illegal, but there have been other attempts to charge police services, because after all, the pumping station reservoir might get vandalized, or to charge a pretend franchise fee for, well, we charge everybody else for putting the pipe in the street, we've got to charge you. And there was a trial court case that's going up on appeal. Didn't think very highly of that, but we'll talk about that when we get to the next workshop. So here's a quick summary, not very quick with all those words, quick summary of the procedure for adopting rates under Prop 218. First, you figure out the parcels upon which it will be imposed, provide written notice by mail, the amount of the proposed fee, the basis upon which it is calculated, together with the date, time, and location of the public hearing. And then that's at 45 days later or more, you have a public hearing where you consider all protests. And if written protests are presented by a majority of owners, you don't impose the fee. I think you all pretty much know that by heart. It's interesting that it says the agency shall consider all protests. It's not clear what that means, but there is a case up in the California Supreme Court where someone had argued, and I believe they succeeded in the trial court, got reversed on an appeal. They said, well, you have to state what your grounds are for objecting to the rate increase at the hearing, on the public hearing, or you can't sue on that. And so maybe there'll be some movement on the Supreme Court in that, but that's, once again, hinting towards something or giving a preview of something we'll talk about later. And then the Proposition 218 Omnibus Implementation Act provides some additional details about how you go through the process. It has a definition about what increased means, allows notice to go into billings. It provides for adopting a schedule for a 5-year period, which is something that this district customarily does. It allows for schedule adjustments, including a CPI or inflation adjustment. It provides for automatic adjustments for passing through wholesale charges for water, like we have with Zone 7, and wastewater treatment. That's like East Bay Mud has with the collection agencies. I don't know how what the fee arrangements are, but that would provide a mechanism if East Bay charged for treatment to the collection systems that feed into its plant. That would be a method they could pass that through. It's not exactly clear how you notice what the increase will be when you don't know what the wholesale agency is going to do. But that's sort of a uncharted territory a little bit. Then finally, it requires a 30-day notice to be given. You can put in the bill of the increase. So the increase is coming up on January 1st for an inflationary increase 30 days before that. You put some, or probably more realistic, 60 to 90 days before that, you put it in bills, because there'll be 2 cycles of bills. And the question has come up as to how, in another context, how you could revise a constitutional provision with a statute. And the tongue-in-cheek answer is because Howard Jarvis, who the foundation or organization that was the proponent of Prop 218, thought these were okay. So it's sort of, it's interpreted as a way of implementing as opposed to trying to override it. Talk briefly about this, substantive requirements or charges under Prop 226. This language like this is in the official statement because there's new law that it's necessary to disclose to investors. So a charge imposed for a specific benefit conferred, as long as it doesn't exceed the reasonable cost of conferring the benefit, or imposed for a specific governmental service, which does not exceed the reasonable cost of providing the service. So those are the two substantive provisions that now govern our water and wastewater capacity fees. And there's an additional requirement that's in the final arrow is actually out of the paragraph that deals with what happens if it's challenged in court. It says the agency has the burden of proving this, the manner in which the costs are allocated bears a reasonable relation to the payer's burdens on or benefits from the system. The Newhall County Water District, which is a Michael Colantuno case, he represented the 4 wholesale customers of, I think, the Cascade Lake Water Agency, I forget which is which. And there were 4 customers, and they said, oh no, we don't have to allocate them, we'll just allocate those based on the total amount of water used. The court said, no, this is not that hard to allocate. There's 4 customers, you can do it, and said and so struck that down under Prop 26. This would be like a trick question if it was a question. Procedures for adopting charges under Prop 26. There are none. It's whatever the statute is. What I've laid out here, you can read at your leisure, is how capacity reserve fees are calculated, are described. The process is described in Government Code Section 66016. You have a meeting during a regular, you have time for presentations during a regular meeting, and you provide data and you provide notice to people that ask for it, but not everyone knows. Now to assessments, substantive requirements for assessments under Prop 218. They're a little bit, quite a bit different than the ones that apply for other fees, the fees and charges that are imposed directly on the property as an assessment. They cannot exceed the reasonable cost of the proportional special benefit conferred on the parcel. And the second paragraph has got a lot of words in it, but it tells the 3 things that you use to, how you go about calculating what the proportional special benefit is. And only special benefits are assessable, not general benefits. So that was a change in the law. Both Prop 218 was in response to some Supreme Court decisions. And in particular, with regard to assessments, there was some law that was pretty favorable to public agencies opposing assessments. This sort of turns it on its head and focuses on special versus general. So as I said, the property must receive a special benefit over and above the benefits conferred on the public, and the amount must be proportional to and no greater than the benefits conferred on the property. And the procedures are a little bit more complicated. I tried to highlight, let's see if somehow this shows up. Yeah, so what looks like dark yellow is actually, it was orange. I was doing the PowerPoint. But you first identify the parcels that have a special benefit conferred upon them. That's due to the assessment context. Then you determine the proportionate special benefit derived by each identified parcels in relationship to those 3 categories. In the case of Doherty Valley, it probably would be the cost of the property-related service being provided. In other words, what is DWR passing? What is Zone 7 passing through from DWR that we need to charge the residents of Doherty Valley? And then the assessments are supported by a detailed engineering report prepared by a registered professional engineer. This would be a little bit, quite a bit more involved than the standard engineering reports we've done every time we've gone through every year and continued the existing assessment in place. And the reason you have to go through these procedures is, would have to go through these procedures if you chose to follow that path for raising the revenue, is because you would actually be increasing the amount of the assessment. That's what triggers the new requirement. As long as it stays the same, you can keep going and going and going without going through these procedures. A little bit more, this is what the engineer will do, calculate the amount of the assessment for for the parcel, and give the record notice. The agency would then give the record owner of each parcel notice of the total amount chargeable to the entire district. That's new, you won't find that in connection with the rates. The duration of the payments, that's also new, and the rest of this is basically, you gotta explain why, how it's calculated, that sort of thing. And then the upcoming public hearing, it's, I didn't say it, but it's for, I think I cut out the part, 45 days. That's 45 days notice, the same as a rate proceeding. The notice has to also include a summary of procedures for counting ballots, including a statement that existing of a majority protest will result in the assessment not being imposed. And, just in case you didn't get it from the previous sentence, each notice shall contain a ballot whereby the owner may indicate his name, parcel, and support or opposition. And there's the 45 days. So the public hearing is conducted 45 days later. Again, the agency considers protests and tabulates the ballots. And majority exists if upon the conclusion of the hearing, ballots submitted in opposition, and here this is where it's really different, exceed the ballots submitted in favor of the assessment. And the ballots are also weighted based upon the proportional financial obligation, which presumably means the amount that would go on each individual property. So, rather than a question of whether you can get half of the people to oppose and kind of actually submit a written protest, here we have to actually get votes in favor. The ballots submitted in favor that outnumber, based on the weighted calculation, the votes, the ballots cast against.
Go back one slide.
What's that?
Back one slide.
Sure.
How literal is that bottom bullet point? Whereby the owner may indicate by his or her name, parcel, and so do renters vote, only owners, property owners?
I'm pretty sure it's owners. I mean, I'd want to go through the Implementation Act in detail. There's about a page and a half in there about what going into more detail. I didn't spend a lot of time focusing on that, but
That'd be different than
yeah.
the 218 for fees. Renters can vote no, because
Right,
it's impossible to
right.
get enough votes to.
Right, I mean, in that context, the renter can vote no, the owner can vote no, or one or the other, and it counts for one vote against. In this case, it says owner, and there's no language in the Implementation Act that says it could go to a renter, but there are people with triple net leases that have to pay things like that, so that's why I don't know the specific answer. If there's nothing that says it goes to anybody other than the owners, because it's going to be on the property, but it's possible you can make an argument based on a triple net lease or something like that, that it should, the notice could go to
So it's
someone else.
murky at best.
It's murky, yeah. And, when the assessment districts are almost always, they're challenged under, is there really special benefits? How did you assess this? There's all sorts of ways to go wrong under the substantive requirements.
Well,
Yeah.
and this would indicate one vote per parcel,
Yes,
right? No
Yeah.
matter the value.
yes, based on the values, based on what the assessment amount is.
Yeah, weighted.
Okay, so it is weighted.
It's weighted, yeah.
So it is a function of the parcel's values, so that would indicate owner. I would think.
Yeah, well, it's the value of the assessment, which will depend upon how the costs are spread.
It could be spread by area or something in our case, because it's one area.
Yeah, it could be. It's possible to spread it based upon outdoor usage, or right now most of the rates. Yeah.
How's
So
it spread now, Jim? How's the assessment spread now?
DUE.
just one DUA. So
One
yeah.
DUA.
So each single-family dwelling
Yeah,
would
it's-
have one, and the
Commercial gets
other.
whatever they use.
And then there's commercial.
What happens to multifamily?
I I don't,
We can work
I
that.
think it's like 1.5 or something. Yeah, it's described in a single residence as 1.
And I think the rest are just ratios.
They're ratios.
Yeah, the ratios,
yeah.
but I don't know what they are off the top.
All right. Sorry, I took you guys over.
No, that's
Yeah,
fine.
so it's
That's
not
fine. I mean,
assessed
that's-
value.
This is supposed to.
But it is weighted in some way.
Yes.
It's not one person, one vote.
Yeah, so a standard single-family owner is going to have more vote than a multifamily.
And a commercial property owner is going to have more votes
A lot of
than a
votes.
standard.
Yeah, yeah. And the bottom one is sort of like an off-ramp. If federal law says you can't just have the owner's vote, you have to have electors vote, there could be the Federal Civil Rights Act or something. In that circumstance, you have to have a majority vote of people who are paying it, and also a 2/3 vote of the electorate. So that's a pretty high hurdle. But that only happens if the court says it would violate federal law to proceed under the normal processes where the property owners make the decision. But I wanted to mention that I
It's a
suppose
good
it
thing
could come
nobody
up.
raised this too carefully. They could probably challenge it on anything.
Yeah, no, there's plenty of opportunities, pretty
Yeah.
convoluted process.
All right.
And it's complicated, and the omnibus implementation, last slide, the Implementation Act prescribes a text that goes on the envelope saying there's a ballot inside, essentially.
Dummy, open your mail.
Yeah, open your mail. It provides additional procedures for the receipt of ballots. It prescribes additional procedures for the hearing, and it has extensive procedures for opening and tabulating the ballots. It says that you have to have an impartial person, which could be the district secretary, but- and it allows the board to continue it for continued tabulation over time in case it gets too complicated and to figure out.
Probably not a good idea if she serves in the area affected.
Yeah, I mean,
She
it does contemplate somebody, it certainly contemplates the idea of hiring somebody to do it, and I think that's what's typically done, because that way you don't have anybody worrying about whether it's fair or not. So, it's complicated, and there's bigger hurdles than there are when you're adopting rates. Not just a matter of counting who's against it, you gotta count who's for it.
All those who are
Well-
not against are for.
Yeah.
All right.
But you have to vote an affirmative yes.
Thank you for that good news.
See, what do we do?
I don't think anybody's actually doing it 100% correctly because it's so ambiguous.
You do have to do a ballot, because it's $2 a ballot. What?
Yeah.
Trying to retro one of these is extremely
No.
difficult.
You wanna go to some other thing?
Good.
Go down. Power off? Okay.
Thank you, Carl.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Boy,
Any
nice.
more questions? for
Really
Carl?
busy slides, sorry about that.
We have them now as reference.
Yeah, I figured that might be helpful.
And some look up all the court cases probably.
I'm gonna catch all the flack. When one of them's down Ramon.
Yeah, there's that.
Technically, we all represent San Ramon.
45% of the ballots voted against it, but they represented 60% of the U.S. customers.
That would be a hurdle we could overcome.
Right.
And the flip side of that is if a bunch of the larger owners vote for it, then you could end up with having a lot of residents who are against it, but people with big votes, actually everybody votes carry it. So, but the big thing is how you gonna get people to send the ballots back again?
Yeah.
Especially the ones that are for it. It's easy enough to get people. The people will send it. They'll be self-motivated to send the ones against it, but sending the ones for it will be the tricky part.
Great.
Okay.
And just on that, I just wanted to note, just obviously has applicability for the Dory Valley Assessment District, and we owe you a progress report that we're going to bring to you in March on that and talk about some of the Prop 218 issues as they relate to the
Okay.
details of that.
And I'll just add to that, Zone 7 is doing some research for the as we speak to explain, first off, why the amount jumped so much in approximately 2009-10, but also they do projections as to what they think that bill will be in the future. Although that's difficult for them, especially since they're negotiating their agreement with DWR. So we'll be getting that data, and then we can compile that for you and give you our alternatives as far as how we may approach revision to this dollar amount.
Okay. Well, if there's no further questions, let's move on to 9F. Receive a presentation and provide direction on the board briefings and workshops.
Yeah, so this is a kind of revisitation of board staff communication practices, talking about some of the presentations like the one you heard tonight on COP 318, which actually the board asked for last fall, along with another legal one that will have coming up soon on the San Juan Capistrano case. And just a couple of questions for the board. We gave you a list of some of the topics we hit last year. We also gave you a list of the topics we've got lined up coming up in the next year. And these briefing topics aren't issues that the board will take an issue on, but it's background information that might relate to decisions on other things that have applicability. So the idea we had tossed out a year ago, and we ended up only doing it a couple times, was are some of these items something that warrant a special meeting, a special half-hour or one-hour meeting in advance? And the advantage that we had pitched was they could be kind of opt-out meetings, so it's not mandatory because the decision's not being made. So if one or two board members said, I feel like I'm on top of that topic, I've heard that at the latest conference or whatever, or I've heard it in the past years, we could opt out and it wouldn't matter, and we could at least have that in the half-hour or hour before the board meeting. So that's one question. Do you want any of the briefings to be done in that way this next year, now that you've had kind of both flavors this last year? And then the other thing is we've got a starter list of important issues. And some of those issues are kind of under the hood issues, particularly this thing on our supervisory control and data acquisition system. I know when you read it there and you read the acronym SCADA, it sounds pretty dry, but I know we're totally gonna beat Carl Nelson in terms of excitement dynamic presentations, so I don't want that. We'll have our words and our graphics flying in and out of the power.
I'll use some good videos.
Music accompaniment.
Engineering calculations?
Yes.
Absolutely, we're going to have it all. So are there, does this stoke any interest in the board in any other topics that they've always had an interest in? So I just had two questions. The format, are you any of these being done in a workshop ahead of time, or should they just be always in the regular board meeting as time allows? Is there anything else you'd like to add?
So we talked about it last year, and I would really like your, before a board meeting presentation on San Juan Capistrano. And the other one is SCADA.
Whether or not it's a separate meeting, it's kind of a time. I don't know.
Well, there's time, and like for example, this in no way denigrates asset management. I love asset management, but we get asset management about every 2 years, so only 4 times. So if that one was a before meeting, I probably would avail myself, at least the opportunity for it to be a before meeting. So yeah, there's time and there's whether it's
I don't know what the time threshold is, half hour.
Nothing we do ever lasts a half an hour, though. If it's informational in nature, we always have a tendency to want to discuss it more.
I know.
One item I'd like to see, because I know strategic plan, we talked about it a little bit, and it's something we're trying to beef up, is emergency response. We've gotten the closed session briefings about some of those topics, but I'd be more like operational, like when the ground stops shaking, what actually happens, who gets called, just out of curiosity.
We're back to the where do we go?
Yeah. Well, we just go home.
I don't know.
We don't go.
We come here for call an emergency declaration.
Yeah, well, this thing says we're designated disaster workers.
No, we're not.
But again, we don't know anything about any of it.
We'll give you, we'll schedule an update of that.
And I know we've made some changes,
You know-
aren't we? Thought we throwing in some people, like we have another,
We are, on that topic, we have had some discussions over the last 6 months with the city of Dublin. Is there a way to maybe integrate some of our functions, get some economy of scale on that? You know, in certain disasters, it may not make sense for everybody to have their ideas. So we're still talking about some of those ideas.
I think that'd be a good topic.
Maybe even sharing a resource and having specialized municipalities typically have full-time or part-time emergency operations coordinator that figures out all the training, what all you have to do, and what's interesting is sharing the cost of something like that. When we probably want to afford or invest in something like that ourselves, but thinking back to somebody else, it might make sense, and we need to cover that in that kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't specifically see any of these that necessarily have to be pulled out, but if there's something that somebody wants to delve into a little bit more, I think it should be outside of the regular meeting, so that, you know, if Rich doesn't care to learn about it, he doesn't have to come.
I care about everything, just sometimes one has to prioritize their time. Yeah.
Okay, you know, go ahead, editorialize on my description, but you know what I meant.
I was just clarifying.
Okay.
How close are we on San Juan Capistrano? I know there's, Carl, I know there's stuff going on at the state level. How close are we to having some stuff
San Juan.
where there might be a toolbox to actually try to manipulate, to maneuver?
Yeah, there's a bunch of things have happened. I mean, a lot of agencies just said, oh, we're going to go away from tiered rates, and, you know, to the extent they've got, we'll talk about it some more, but there's a couple of court cases like that one I mentioned, it's Plantier versus Ramon, where they're arguing that there's an administrative process where you have to identify what the basis of your lawsuit in hearing. If that was to go forward, that would be a very positive thing, obviously, for public agencies.
So, yeah, I think I briefed on that.
Yeah.
It's been, if we're doing any water rates,
We're doing water rates this year, later this summer to go effective no earlier than January 1st, and also depending on the timing, we might implement kind of a mid-year thing on the workload issues, but sometime early next year, new rates would need to be adopted. We've had our last rate increase under the 5-year rule that Carl talked about earlier, so we have no more automatic CPI increases in our water rates. We need to go through with a process to implement something next year.
yeah, that's one door.
Okay, item 10, board member items. Ken? Pat? Rich?
Nope, I'm fine.
Well, you know me.
Yes,
Okay, first of all, and this one's just a fun one, you all got this map. Tom and I have been going through boxes as we put together all the things I've collected over the years so I can set up a display here as well as a display at the city of Dublin of all the tchotchkes and the jackets and the bags and the whole thing. Anyway, going through those boxes, I came across this, and it noted at the top, trip to Oroville Dam, April 25th, 1965. This is the original stuff they handed out when it first opened up. I just thought it was fun.
Largest construction contract in the country,
Yeah.
120.8 million.
It's so, you know, it's almost like watching an old movie. It's so corny now to look at this, but it was a big deal. I mean, obviously, we took a whole day to go up there, and I came home and saved these for what, 30, some 40, whatever, 50 years. Anyway, okay, and the second thing is, we got a certificate because of our contribution to the Education Foundation. And again, one of the graduates, one of the, I shouldn't say graduates, one of the recipients of the CASA scholarship? Yes. scholarships spoke, and you know, these young people are just amazing at the level they are. This young lady was very, very, very informative, she was very comfortable in front of the whole group and was very knowledgeable. And it's wonderful. You feel really good about the contribution going to the scholastic or to the scholarships when you see someone like that.
Jordan, can I add?
Sure.
She got started in the science fair.
Oh, really?
Yes. That was one of her comments. She got started, with the science fair winning a prize. So the prize money we give for science affairs to our local science affairs.
Yep.
Science fairs for excellence in water research is well worth it.
Yeah.
It might inspire the next generations. Yay.
So anyway, she was very, very great to listen to, very rewarding to see the money going to someone like her. Basically, this was at the CASA convention last week, and I only have a couple of items. I went to the CASA board meeting, I went to the biosolids meeting. One of the CASA sessions was Santa Rosa's emergency response during their horrible crisis. Ben Horenstein, who's the department head for the city of Santa Rosa for the water department and I don't know, maybe even wastewater, but he talked about the problems he ran into, which nobody, they're going to be able to present a paper on all the things they didn't prepare for. One of the big things which it didn't cross my mind at all was when Kmart burned down, the 12-inch water main coming in that fed the sprinklers, they had no way to turn it off. So that's how they lost a lot of their pressure in their system, was this 12-inch water main was just dumping water into smoldering nothing. And of course, any of the big buildings have that. So that's right on the top of their list, is to think about having shut-off valves far enough away to where you don't get burned, but to affect that so it stops. I kind of felt sorry for him because you could tell he was still very much, very emotional about the entire situation. They lost a lot of people and houses and all the employees, and yet they still had to respond. So that was a really a good presentation. The other presentation that I thought was worth something is CASA has decided to give $7,000 to donate to, approve a $7,000 contribution to NACWA for the economic study of the cost of removing flushable wipes. And Bill Long on the CASA board pointed out that the reality is it should be non-flushable wipes because that's the problem. And so there's, all sorts of goodies they have already. I'm going to put a bump on my bumper sticker, Should take a place right next to Eileen. So anyway, those were two good parts of the CASA convention. Let's see, I think that's it.
On the wipes, I got
Yes.
a bunch of, from South Lake Tahoe, they have a campaign going on with mailers. Do not put, they call them disposable wipes. Do not put those in the toilet. So that's a big concern.
Well, I guess the thing out there is, if you read the packages, he had a couple of the slide pictures. They say flushable on them. That's what the wipes say. But of course, they're not, as we know. And they had horrible pictures of some of the destruction it's causing, people having to clean out these tons of wipes in the screens and the filters. And so it's actually a very, very big deal, I guess. I know we've had trouble with the little stickers, but I don't know if flushable wipes have been.
The monies that we spend on assets just to maintain the quality control and comply with the permit order is amazing. The bar screens, the specialty chopper pumps, the extra equipment, large vehicles that we utilize to suck it out of the sewer system. I actually mentioned in one of the sessions that there should be some type of tax similar to timber when you go to Home Depot, and the tax should be regenerated back to the region towards the entities that basically put their monies into this extra infrastructure to keep things moving.
Well, that's one of the reasons CASA decided to contribute to the NACWA study, is so we can get a better handle on what the actual cost is. I mean, are we hiring a whole person, or is it really maintenance and, all the other costs?
It's very intense in finance, I can tell you that. A lot of money is equipment costs to maintain and control these water and sewer system.
So there's no law that says you can make this product and call it flushing.
The problem is,
It doesn't break
they are
down.
flushable.
Yeah,
It's
they
not-
are.
They're not solid.
Right.
There have been a couple of legislative efforts. There's one in the District of Columbia is now under challenge, in part under, because they required certain labeling, and the First Amendment challenge. And so the judge was saying, have to do it more like what's on a cigarette pack or something like that. But, and there's, I'm trying to remember, there's another place, well, it's a state around DC that has also had one. NACWA is looking towards, I think, trying to go with model ordinances or statutes.
And I think this study is probably going to be the foundation by which they develop that ordinance, that whatever we're going to call it, that will do something, because it's sort of one of those hidden costs that nobody ever thinks about. But the pictures that they had were absolutely amazing, and I bet we've got some like that too. We took the picture. And they're actually shoveling them out of whatever it is they collected.
A special suit with really thick arms and gloves, and
Yes.
The difficulty is those rags and the non-deflushable ones that actually attract needles in the sewer system from users and so forth. And it's like a magnet for those type of things, so it puts you at a big safety risk as well.
So basically, it's like a piece of cloth.
Yes, it really is. Except even a cloth will evaporate. What's the word?
There's one of the things they showed in the presentation was there is a technology that actually produces ones that do disintegrate like toilet paper. Yeah, but I think that I think in Japan.
It's Japanese.
Japanese, yeah. Yeah, so there is the argument that there is no technology available, which is not true. It's just a question of getting it here. And dollars.
And dollars. Always money. Follow the money. Okay. We are now. Yeah, where's my script? Here we go. At this time, the board will be going into closed session for the matter described on the agenda under item 11A. The broadcast will be stopped now, as it is anticipated that there will be no report from closed session. Any report will be announced in open session at the end of the meeting. Contact the district secretary during regular district business hours for more information. Okay.
So it wasn't appropriate for the camera, for this conversation. I think that's what I saw.